Okay, I don't feel good about breaking up this sense of community and everything, but the enemy on the wall says it's almost 3:24, so we're going to have to get moving if we're going to get all these cool presentations and tributes and everything in today. So, and hopefully the live stream will be starting, and we'll get moving on this. So, Dr. Ramirez, I think... Okay, it's yours.
Very good. Is this thing live? Yeah, very good. Okay, well, let's continue. With the seminar. We have a lot to cover. So this is some of my latest research. This is a very interesting one. We were documenting how when you go against your conscience, that is not good for your mental health. So whatever you know is right, whatever you know is wrong, you should follow through with that, because going against that is not good for your mental health. This other one, and these are my patients, and we were documenting how the lipids improve actually quite fast when the person changes their diet to a healthy intervention. Those lipids start improving quite fast. In a matter of 2 weeks, the cholesterol, the LDL, HDL starts improving, and so forth. This other one, talking about females, many times they're doing good, but menopause comes, and then they start getting out of control. In this study, we're documenting that those females at that period of life, they don't necessarily need to go worse in their health markers. As they improve their lifestyle, those markers can actually improve. This other one, we're documenting how people that already have angina. Angina is when you have clogged the arteries of your heart, and you start getting this heaviness in your chest and so forth when you are doing physical activity. So we're documenting in this study how as those people start to make lifestyle changes, the risk factors that are indicating that things are improving actually start improving quite fast as the person changes their lifestyle. And this one is a fascinating study. In this study, we are documenting something really, really interesting. See, in the Weimar New Start program, we do a stress test on every patient. And stress test is when they put you on a treadmill and then they hook up an EKG. So sometimes heart disease that is hidden, you don't pick it up unless you put the heart to work. And that's basically what we're trying to do, as we put them on a treadmill. So in this study, I documented how the people that were picked up by the fact that they already had some heart disease, the markers were not good as they started doing the stress test. By the end of only 18 days, half of those patients, the EKG improved. In other words, the arteries were starting to heal in a matter of 18 days in half of our patients. I mean, this is pretty impressive, how fast that healing mechanism can happen. And this other one, very interesting study, especially for those paleos and high protein diets and stuff like that. Here we are showing how if you are including animal products in your diet, your hemoglobin A1C tends actually to be higher, which means that your diabetes control is not the best, compared to the people that eliminate their animal products. What is showing here is that those marker for diabetes starts to improve. This other one, we're showing here how exercises of abstract thinking are good to strengthen your frontal lobe, which at the same time help you overcome things like smoking. And this other one interesting study also, this one was documenting how people that are that have in their background sexual abuse are more likely to pick up addictions. And it could be a reason because of the pain and trauma and so forth, and you're trying to deal with that, and sometimes, you end up dealing with it in the wrong ways. So how much more likely to pick up addictions. Therefore, if you are trying to help somebody that is struggling with addictions, you may have to take this factor into account and deal with that factor as you try to improve, their health. And I've been to all kinds of places. At one point, I was actually living for a few months in an Amish community. And I had just recently graduated from my undergraduate, which happened to be computer science. So here you are in the Amish community with computer science degree. That's not very compatible to making yourself some living. Good thing I had also taken massage therapy. I actually got certified as a massage teacher also. So that one was very useful. The Amish people actually like massage very much. And as somebody was commenting, what they do, they'll mail you a little card and say, hey, can you come to my house and do a little massage? It's such an interesting community. I started understanding a little bit, how they think and so forth. It's so funny. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the Amish communities, but they have the same furniture, all the houses. So you came to a house like deja vu. I've been here before because they have the same, even the way they put the furniture and so forth. And I actually became very famous in that community. So there was this very old Amish. He was actually retired. He would just, work 1 or 2 hours a day, and then he'll, take it easy the whole time. So he sent me a card there. He wanted a massage, and yeah, sure enough, he had all this spasm there in his back. So I worked him out like really nicely and so forth. And then he felt really, really good afterwards. And next day, he felt so good, he went and worked the whole day to the point that he ended up getting a heart attack and dying. And for them, they think a little bit like the Muslims, inshallah, is the will of God. It doesn't matter what you did or what you didn't do, that was his destiny and so forth. So I actually became very famous. And everybody started wanting me to go and give him the same massage you give to that man. I want him to give it to me. So if anybody wants to sign up for massage, just let me know. But that's a very interesting mentality. And some people think that, Amish, the healthiest. No. These people are not healthy. All this fat and white flour, they go and park their buggies in front of the McDonald's and are eating McDonald's and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot of need to do health education among them, no question about it. And as a reminder, your textbook is going to be this Pandemic Busters we're talking about here this afternoon. That's where you can find the information. And let me share with you a few more things I put on my Twitter account, EddieRDMD. Look at this study from Harvard University. Sitting down for too long increases your risk of stroke. So you need to, be getting up on a regular basis. It's not good to be sitting down the whole time. This other one, very interesting study, just published recently. Loss of visual sensitivity can predict Alzheimer's disease 12 years before the diagnosis of Alzheimer's. And that's a fact, because of the nerves of the eye, very sensitive. When those are starting to fail, things may not be well at the level of the brain. This other one, very interesting study, if you work in a routinary type of work in which you're not really engaging your mind and so forth, increases your risk for cognitive decline by 66%. So make sure you are doing some sort of job that challenges your brain and makes you really think. It's not good just to go on neutral gear. This other one, the wonderful things and benefits you get by being surrounded by greenery. So as I was mentioning earlier, it's important to spend some time in nature. Nature has some healing that you can experience as you spend the time there. In my book, I actually dwell quite a bit on this. This one also very interesting study, a very interesting correlation between diabetes and sleep duration. People that sleep the least have the highest rates of diabetes. So that's why, and one of the most important things you can do is to improve your sleeping patterns. This one also very interesting study. I've been following this quite a bit. How light stimulation actually decreases fasting glucose in the body. So there's a lot of potential benefits. So you don't need to buy one of these expensive machines. Go outside where the sun is. You want to get this benefit. See, as you do the exercise outside, the sunlight has that hypoglycemic effect. This other one, be careful. We're seeing a big movement trying to use this type of drugs that cause hallucinations and so forth. They're saying, oh, maybe we should treat depression with them. In my opinion, that's not a good thing. It has been documented that many people end up actually in the ER after using those types of drugs because they have, they mess around very much with the chemistry of the brain. So don't take shortcuts. Rather, deal with the root cause of the problem and reverse it. This other one, how when you are in deep sleep, that's when the cleansing mechanism of the brain takes place. So it's not only sleeping, but we need to sleep deeply. That's when the cleansing starts to occur. This other one, very interesting, how caffeine, taking caffeine, especially the late type of coffee, it's decreasing the sleep duration and it's decreasing the sleep quality. Exactly what I was telling you. So you may sleep, but the sleep is not doing its job. That's why, caffeine is a horrible habit that you should try to overcome. This other one, a systemic review and meta-analysis, they take all the studies together about it and they put them all together. This is the most powerful studies of all. And how caffeine will affect you 8.8 hours, will affect your sleep. That's how long the effect of the caffeine is in the body. And if you took the caffeine and you did workout, by the workout, you distribute that caffeine much more and you put it more in your brain, it actually will interfere with your sleep for 13 hours. See, that is not good because you block your melatonin. Your melatonin is your youth hormone. So you're going to end up aging faster. It's not worth it. As I teach people in lifestyle medicine, if something is addictive, it's not good for you. Okay? So watch out for the addictive things. This other one, very interesting study, they found this linear correlation between fiber and blood pressure. So the more fiber you eat, the better the effect on your blood pressure. That's why you need to make sure that you are fitting all your plate, with all these rich, fiber-rich foods. This one, interesting. We drank for happiness and became unhappy. We drank for joy and became miserable. We drank for sociability and became argumentative. We drank for friendship and made enemies. We drank for strength and felt weak. We drank for bravery and became afraid. We drank to feel heavenly and end up feeling like hell. We drank for freedom and became slaves. And that's one of the problems, isn't it, with this alcohol? Again, the addictive potential and so forth. Half of all the crimes occur on people under the effect of alcohol. Imagine that. If you could decrease by half the crime rate, wouldn't that be wonderful? Well, we could start doing some things as society. And this other one, this is from the Daily Mail, just a secular newspaper from England. They were documenting how Seventh-day Adventists live longer and have 30% lower cancer risk than the rest of the Americans. Interesting, isn't it? That's a pretty good number. So yeah, you find all those and many more on that Twitter account, Eddie RDMD. Every day I put something there to motivate you to do those healthy lifestyle choices. So let's talk about a fascinating subject, the subject of epigenetics. See, our genes are not our destiny. Many times as I talk to patients, the patient tells me, "Doctor, I think I'm destined to be a very sick person for the rest of my life. My dad had this disease, my grandfather died of this, my grandma is struggling with this other one. I think I have very bad genes." Well, that's not necessarily true, as we are going to learn today. See, in the old days, we thought that your genes were some sort of prophecy inside of you that would predict what was going to happen to you. But as we started learning more about genetics, we learn that many genes actually have activating and deactivating mechanisms. For example, this is one of my clinical cases. This is a patient from Weimar New Start. This clinical case, we published it in one of the American Heart Association journals called Atherosclerosis, Thrombosis, and Vascular Biology. Classic patient that comes to Weimar. Patient had problem with obesity. He was weighing 381 pounds. Patient had diabetes for a while. He was taking metformin. Patient, even though he was taking 2 medications for his blood pressure, still his blood pressure was no good. 150/78. That's too high of a blood pressure. And in only a matter of 18 days, this patient was able to lose 16 pounds, and we had to stop his blood pressure medication because his blood pressure became normal, 116/72. Now, the patient didn't say, "Ooh, I got well, I'm going to go back to my hamburgers," No, he learned his lesson very well. And from now on, he decided to continue living that New Start, healthy, plant-based lifestyle at home. So here it is after 11 months after starting the changes. As we do complete blood analysis, his numbers are beautiful. Look at his blood pressure, 110/68. Beautiful, no medication. Cholesterol, 140. The parentheses are for the Europeans, if there's any European here. So my target cholesterol should be 150 and less. Framingham study shows that that is the heart attack free zone. So that should be your target, 150 or less. Bad cholesterol, LDL, look at that number, 61, beautiful. Your LDL should be 75 and under. That is the heart attack free zone. But the most surprising number that we see there is that hemoglobin A1C of 5.5 it means this patient is no longer diabetic. Good news or bad news? Good news. See, I have 30 years of working in these lifestyle centers, and I've seen this over and over again. This is not like, oh, every 20 years I've seen one of these. No, you see this all the time as the person starts making those lifestyle changes. And you can see here, after a year and a half on that healthy lifestyle, after losing 141 pounds, no longer obese, no longer diabetic, no longer hypertensive. And that's why I love to do what I do, because patients get better. You know, this is the beauty of this. I remember when I went to medical school and you're rotating there in the hospital, man, those patients don't get better. In fact, we load them more with more medication, and it is a never-ending cycle. While the lifestyle medicine model, you deal with the root causes, and then you start seeing this type of results. This is BBC News, you know, very serious newspaper from England. In the study, they're documenting, this is a press release for another paper that came out in the British Medical Journal that said that 75% of the doctors and 75% of the patients don't know that their type 2 diabetes is potentially reversible. So if the doctor doesn't know, you think they can help the patient reverse it. And that's why conferences like the one that we had this week, you know, we're very thankful for May organizing this. It sheds such important information that people need to know, because this brings hope to people as they can understand this important information. So the genes have these switches, just like the switch that turns on this light. See, you can have the switch, you can have the electricity, you can have the right cables, you can have the bulb, but not unless the switch is on, the light is not going to go on. The same story happens to your genes. Your genes, many of them have that on-off switch that you can do something about it. For example, I did this genetic analysis on myself. And notice that in the results of the genetic analysis, it says that I have an increased likelihood of type 2 diabetes. Yet if you go and check my hemoglobin A1C, it is perfectly normal. You check my fasting glucose, is perfectly normal. Why is that? This is something that we're going to be learning this afternoon by the name of epigenetics. Epigenetics is that mechanism that the body uses to turn on and off disease. Now, think about this with your genes. There's some genes that are health genes. There's some genes that are disease genes. Which genes you want to stimulate? What type of lifestyle are you doing? Are you doing the lifestyle that is encouraging the activation of the sick genes? Or are you doing a lifestyle that is activating the health genes? So, Time Magazine did a very interesting issue about the subject. And quoting from the magazine, the new science of epigenetics reveals how the choices you make can change your genes. And who else's? Your kids' genes. See, what happens is the way you are living is either activating disease genes or is activating health genes. And the position of those switches, you're actually inheriting those positions to those switches to your children, predisposing them towards health or predisposing them towards disease. That is something that you choose, which direction you want to go. And see, the Marshall Islands, Brenda Davis was just there a couple of weeks ago. This is a clear example of what happens with these disease genes. See, you can actually go to the internet, to YouTube and so forth. The Americans used the Marshall Islands as a site where they would test their atomic bombs. It was very interesting experiments. They were built, different houses with different materials, and then they will detonate an atomic bomb to see, which materials are more resistant to an atomic blast and these type of things. But because they were doing that, the radiation from those bombs end up affecting some of the populations of the nearby islands. And what they did, they took the American government to court. So the Americans couldn't deny it. They were the ones that detonated those bombs and so forth. So the Marshallese people end up, receiving a significant amount of money as a result of that suit. Now think about it. You are living in the Marshall Islands, beautiful, paradisiacal type of islands. Life is calm and so forth. And then you're going to get a bunch of money. What are you going to do with so much money? There's not like malls and things there to go and buy things. Well, what ended up happening to these people, they end up getting another bomb, but this time a bomb of food. And they started changing the way they live. And they started importing all kinds of things that their ancestors didn't eat. So from a simple diet of fruits, roots, vegetables, and a few products from the ocean, today their favorite food is Spam. If you were wondering who eats that, I was wondering who eats this thing, These people there in the Pacific Islands love this stuff. You go to the islands there in the Pacific, they have the pile of Spam there, They just love this thing. And that is causing tremendous problems because as they changed the way they live, they started activating the disease genes. And today, sadly, the Marshall Islands has one of the highest rates of diabetes in the world. From a place where diabetes was unknown, from a place where you didn't know, such thing as diabetes. Now diabetes is something super common in that island. Now, what caused the problem? Luck or epigenetics? See, by changing the way they were living, they started stimulating the disease genes. And it's interesting because God wants us to be healthy. Look at the will of God in Deuteronomy 4:40. You shall therefore keep his statutes and his commandments, which I command you today, that it may go well with you and with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days. God wants you to prolong your days. That is the will of God. And notice here what happens with diabetes. One of the factors that predisposes to diabetes is abdominal fat, the fat that is inside our organs. Now here there is a genetic factor. Some people need just a little bit of extra weight, and that's enough for them to develop diabetes. Some other people need to gain quite a bit of that weight to develop the diabetes. But still, an etiology that tends to be very common is that abdominal growth. Now, if you're not into genetics and this type of things, think about these genes like cookbooks. What's a cookbook? A cookbook is a collection of recipes, yes or no? And what's a recipe? Is the step-by-step procedure at how you accomplish something. Okay? So, think about those genes as recipes. So you have the whole DNA is that cookbook, and each of the recipes are those individual genes. Or just like your apps, think about your apps in your phone. They have different apps for different things. You have different genes for different functions. Now, this process of the DNA is something fascinating. Let me show it to you with an animation. So, if you go inside a cell, you will find the nucleus. And if you find the nucleus and you go inside there, that's where the famous DNA is. And anytime the gene activates, this is what needs to take place. First, we need a micro machine that knows how to open the DNA without damaging it. So that micro machine opens the DNA very carefully. Then, I need to make a copy of the particular recipe that I need. So another micro machine assembles and starts making a copy of that particular recipe. You know how you call this thing? That's the famous mRNA, the vaccination and so forth. That's the famous mRNA. And then this thing needs to travel outside, needs to identify correctly at the door of the nucleus. If it identifies correctly, the door will open. Then it will travel outside. And then this is just a recipe. We need to interpret the recipe. Therefore, there is another micro machine outside that is going to take that recipe and start to interpret it. So, another micro machine will assemble and will start to make a copy of the recipe. The way you interpret this, there are 3 complementary pairs that need to match perfectly. If they match, they stay there. And then in the bottom, a protein will start to form. That is the interpretation of that gene. If there's one mistake, it doesn't work. This thing needs to be done really, really accurately. If you zoom out, you can see that the recipe is coming up in the top and the end result is in the bottom. But there's still one more step that we need to do with this protein. Now, there's another micro machine that knows how to fold this protein in the right way. So the micro machine starts to make that folding of the protein. Again, one mistake in the angle, the protein is no good. This thing needs to be done completely accurately. And then after folding very carefully this protein and having the end result that needs to be, something that works like a truck comes and picks up this protein and it's going to take it where is needed. Is this thing simple? You know, I was taking a refresher course on biochemistry recently. It was one of the best teachers in America that was teaching that. And he told us, I don't care what you believe, but somebody designed this, he said. There's no question about it. Because if you think about it, you know, this is like a mouse trap. For a mouse trap to work, you need to have everything there. You cannot have this evolving little by little and so forth. It doesn't work. Either everything is there and the thing is working, or it's not working. As simple as that. There are people with PhDs spend their whole life just studying one of these steps, you know, because this is so complex and complicated. And it's happening right now inside of your body. So the body is something fascinating. You know, we have this interesting symmetry in our body. And let me tell you something very interesting. See, we said that with epigenetics, you turn on and off the genes, isn't it? Now, here's the interesting thing. Those genes, that cookbook, we have unique cookbooks. Your cookbook is different than my cookbook. That's why we don't look alike. Okay? In that cookbook, everything is coded there. What type of skin color you're going to have, how tall you're going to grow, how the hair it will be, even traits of personality and emotional intelligence, and all these factors are coded there in that book of recipes. Now here's the interesting thing. Every cell in your body, you have 1 trillion cells, every cell in your body has the same cookbook. Okay? Do you understand what I just said? Every cell in your body has the same cookbook. Now think about it. If you have the same cookbook in every cell in your body, the instructions of how to make the human being are encoded there. It means that in your hand, the genes in your hand know how to make the heart. How come you don't have your heart there? The genes in your feet know how to make the liver. How come you don't have your liver there? What's the answer? Starts with an E. Epigenetics. See, when you were in your mother's womb and it came time to make the hand, anything not related to hand was turned off through epigenetics, and anything related to the hand was turned on. And that's why when you were in your mother's womb, it was like an orchestra, certain genes turning on here, another genes turning off here, and so forth. And that's why pregnant females need to be so careful what they do, which medications they take, and which diet they have, and so forth, because you end up messing around with those genes, and you may turn on or off something you shouldn't, and then, the malformations and this type of problems can occur. So that's why we need to be extra careful with that. Now, notice this very interesting thing that King David wrote in the book of Psalms. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest part of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed. And in which book? Which book is that? The DNA. In that DNA, they were all written, the days fashioned for me, when yet there was none of them. Every single thing there was written before it was made. And then, when the genes are turned off, when the recipe is turned off, the body just doesn't destroy that. Instead, it packages that gene very carefully and puts it away, just like what you do. I mean, you probably have the same problem I have at home. I have too much stuff. Do you have too much stuff? What do you do with so much stuff? Man, you put some box there under the bed and above the dresser and all kinds of places, isn't it? In the same way, the body turns off things, packages things, and puts them away in case, one day it may be necessary and you can unpackage those things. You can actually see this if you have a very powerful microscope. See, if you go and put your microscope in the nucleus of the cell, remember that's where we found the DNA when we went inside the nucleus, you can literally see that. See, that's the nucleus that you're seeing there in the center. Notice that there's a dark area and there's a more clear area. Can you see that? See, in the dark area, that's where the packaged DNA is. Because it's packaged, it has higher density. That's why you can see it. But remember how we saw the DNA that is active is nice and stretched out. That's the DNA that you find in the clear parts of that graphic there. So that's how you differentiate between the activated DNA and the active DNA that is actually producing mRNAs and so forth. Now, notice this interesting fact. We said that your cookbook is different than my cookbook, isn't it? That's why we don't look alike. The exception of this is identical twins. Identical twins happen to share the same cookbook. That's why they look alike. That's why they act alike. That's why they speak alike. Now, notice this interesting pair of twins. Notice that their hair is different. Can you see that? Now, they didn't paint the hair. For some reason, the gene coding for hair color is activated correctly in one and inactivated in the other one. Notice this dog. Look at his eyes. What do you see? See, in one, it's not that he has one cookbook in one eye and a different cookbook in the other one. Again, by some reason, the gene encoding for the eye color is turned on correctly in one and is turned off in the other one. Now, let's go to the application. Why are we learning this? See, there are these mice that are manipulated artificially, and they actually turn on the disease gene of these mice. Now, how come they're being so mean and turning on their disease genes? Well, these mice, are going to develop heart disease. They're going to develop high cholesterol. Some of them will develop cancer and all kinds of diseases. And the reason why they do this is because they can test medications and do all kinds of experiments on them. Before doing them on humans, they do them on the poor mice. But because they're messing around with the genes, they also modify the hair color gene. And these mice are actually yellow. Have you ever seen a yellow mouse? No, isn't it? You probably, unless you go to one of these labs where they have them. Now, this so interesting study was showing, do you see the yellow mouse there? When that mice was pregnant, they put these mice on the New Start program, the good plant-based nutrition, high in folates that have a lot to do with the activation of the genes, exercise, and all these good behaviors. And then, when the baby was born, you see it next to it. What do you see with the hair color? See, no longer yellow. See, the healthy lifestyle started turning off the disease gene in these mice. Now, here comes the fascinating part. When they published the paper, they documented that these changes were being inherited to the third and fourth generation. Anybody has heard about something about a third and fourth generation? Where? Where did you heard such thing? In the Bible. In what part of the Bible? The first 5 books mentions it a few times. Who wrote those 5 books of the Bible? Moses. Somebody knows where Moses got his PhD on genetics? How did he have this information? This is written, more than 3,000 years ago. Here's one of those examples where he writes about that third and fourth generation. How did he have this information? This is just fascinating. We just learned about it, and it's been there for more than 3,000 years. Now, sadly, the opposite is also true. In this other experiment, they had rats, and instead of putting these rats when they were pregnant on a healthy lifestyle, they put these rats on a diet that included animal products, high fat, refined foods, not much exercise, and so forth. So when these baby rats were born, the disease genes were on these baby rats. And as they followed them, they documented that their cholesterol started going up, that their temperance started failing, they were overeating, they like to eat junk food and fat, they end up having an early puberty, which is a marker of less longevity, and they end up having problems with their weight. Now notice this paper from journal Nutrients, a very serious nutrition paper. Science has discovered that what we eat exerts these strongest effects on these epigenetic switches. It means in my home I have something very dangerous. It's called the fork. What are you poking with that fork is either turning on the disease genes or is turning on the health genes. Be careful what are you eating, because it has the strongest effect on those epigenetic switches. And this is the problem that we are having in America. In 1985, the American government was very worried that we were having a lot of obesity in America. So they decided to start documenting where obesity was located. And you can see those states with the dark blue color, 10 to 14% of those states have a problem with obesity. Notice what happened with time. 1986, 1987, 1988, 1989, 1990, 1991, new classification. Now 15 to 19% of those states with the dark blue color have obesity. 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, new classification, 97. Now, 1 out of 5 people in those states have a problem of obesity in that yellow color. 98, 99, 2000, 2001, new classification. Now, 1 out of 4 people in those states with the orange have a problem with obesity. 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, new classification. Now, 30% of the people in that red states have a problem with obesity. 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. This is what we were talking about, the South. Do you see where the problem lies? 2011, 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And that's 21, the last one. So can you see the problem here? Can you assume what's happening to the disease genes? See, as people start gaining that weight, it's not only the gaining of the weight, but also you start turning on multiple other genes that shouldn't be turned on, and we get ourselves as a country. Notice that now we're reaching the 50%, in some of those states. So the problem is that as obesity increases, many other diseases start to increase. These things are not just isolated. And the problem that we're seeing is that now children are seeing the negative effects of this. Many times I had this experience. Mothers then bring me their child and they tell me, "Doctor, my child is sick. Look how thin he is. I think he's very sick." There we have a standard charts there, and you can take their height, you can take their weight. Everything is normal on that child. Why does the mother think that that child is sick? Because their their playmates are having problems with obesity, and we are actually changing the definition with our eyes. Now, round forms are the common things. And when you are normal weight, people sometimes are going to come to you, hey, are you sick or what's happening to you? You know, we're changing the definition in today's society because this problem is so common. And the worst part, this is a paper from a journal Circulation. You can see here, these are the arteries of the heart of a 19-year-old. This guy is really old, isn't it? Is he old? Look at that. He already has heart disease at the age of 19. The average 19-year-old in America, if they're following the average American lifestyle, that's how their artery looks like. Now you may say, oh, doctor, it's a tiny little bit. Is that a big deal? Yes, it's a big deal. Because if you study how fluids flow on a tube, by blocking 10%, you don't decrease the flow by 10%, but rather this thing is exponential. The things start going up and up and up. Now notice this other lady. She is 33 years old. Man, this lady is like really, really old, isn't it? Yes or no? No, quite young. And look at the artery of her heart. Half of that artery is clogged. Now, if you go and talk to this lady doesn't have a single symptom of heart disease. Chest doesn't hurt. She doesn't get a pain that runs to the arm or runs to the neck and so forth. Yet, she's like really close to the precipice. What you should do if you're close to the precipice? You should walk back as far as possible. And that's the issue. Not because you don't have symptoms, that doesn't mean everything is okay. Watch out for that. So, another worrisome thing are these microplastics. So I'm documenting here in my tweet from New England Journal of Medicine. We're finding out that those microplastics stimulate atherosclerosis. So watch out for that, because if you're being exposed to those microplastics, you stimulate atherosclerosis. Now, sadly, a new trend that we're finding, look at this study from New England. This is another one of my tweets. How 75% of the fish in New Zealand have microplastics. You know, I've been to New Zealand. Things look quite clean there. Yet, if they have those issues, imagine in some other places in which pollution is even higher. So, this is something very, very worrisome. Now, this is another very interesting study that is an ongoing study. They still keep on publishing papers about this. And it is a study of the people in the Netherlands. See, in the Netherlands, I have spoken there in the past. Netherlands is a country that is very productive regarding agriculture. There's farms all over the place there. So, during the Second World War, the Nazis were very interested at getting the Netherlands because they needed food for their soldiers. So they conquered the Netherlands and took away the food from the farms to send it to the front lines of the Nazi army, and the people in the Netherlands didn't have enough food to eat. So ladies that were pregnant, they were surviving on diets that were 1/4 or 1/5 of the normal calories that they should be eating. They were just eating a tiny little bit. And still, by God's grace, some of those babies were able to survive that pregnancy. Of course, you know, they were small for their size and so forth. But that's where we learn about something fascinating that we call the thrifty genes. Some of you may have those thrifty genes. The thrifty genes are genes that turn on when there's a lot of needs, there's not enough resources, not enough food. So in order to survive, you turn on those thrifty genes that help you survive instead of having very little resources. The problem with those thrifty genes is that they're not very compatible with America, where everything is overabundant here. So after the Second World War, once the cookies came back, and the milk came back, and the cows came back, and the chickens came back, and so forth, what they were documenting is that the people that had those thrifty genes that were born during that time of the war had tremendous rates of heart disease, of cancer, and many other health problems. So, if in your past your ancestors went through famines, through wars, through forced migrations and so forth, you may be carrying some of those thrifty genes. That means you need to take extra care of not activating disease genes, because those thrifty genes make you activate disease genes much easier. So watch out for that. And we know also that things such as cannabis, marijuana, this stuff is not good for you. It messes around with those disease genes. Not because it's legal, not because everybody is now using the thing, it's good. No, this stuff is not good for you. I actually have done research on the subject. We're documenting how marijuana is linked to poor mental health. So the reason being is because it starts stimulating those negative epigenetic switches. And also marijuana affects your emotional intelligence. That's why New York Times recently ran an interesting article that he called, "If you want to be a loser for life, start using marijuana." Because marijuana destroys your motivation. And if you don't have motivation, do you think you want to, keep forward and keep advancing and so forth? That's why it affects the emotional intelligence. And not only that, the concentration of the active ingredient of marijuana is very high today. In this study, they were showing how we're seeing tremendous increases in schizophrenia secondary to using the marijuana. Also, alcohol has a negative effect on those epigenetic switches. Stress has a negative effect. And let me share with you this other study, very interesting study. This is a study from Dr. Ornish, and what he did, he had these males that had prostate cancer. And the reason why they approved this study is because prostate cancer treatment, there's many schools of thought. Some say, go aggressive and start, the surgery and remove the thing. Some others say, no, let's wait and watch. Let's see how this thing is changing. Then we can decide, how we proceed with the cancer. So that's why it was approved by the ethics committee. And what they did, the protocol was the following. They took these males and they took a needle, put it there on the prostate to take a sample, and then put it on them the microscope, number one, to really confirm that they had the prostate cancer, and two, they started counting. Remember in the video, those recipes that were flying outside? If you can count those, you know which genes are active, because only the active genes generate those mRNAs. So indirectly like that, you can actually know which genes are active, and that's what they did. And what they did, they put people on basically the New Start, plant-based diet, exercise, stop smoking, stress control, water, and so forth. And then 3 months later, they repeat the intervention. Now, when we talk about cancer, we can put two big groups of genes involved in cancer. We have what we could call the cancer promoter genes. Do they sound good or bad? Bad. You don't want to have the cancer promoter genes activated, because that means the cancer, you're giving them free roll to grow and to expand and to metastasize and so forth. Second group is called the cancer inhibitor genes. Are they good or bad? Good. You want to have those cancer inhibitor genes nice and active. Here's the result of the study. You can see here in the line in the middle is the before and after. This is the after on the right. This is the before on the left side. Cancer genes have very weird names. You can see them all there on the right side. And the first line there is the same patient as the first line after the dotted line. Then the second patient, third. Any changes that happen in the before and after just by looking at this graphic? Yeah, lots of changes that happen, isn't it, at the level of the activation of the genes. Look at what they published in the paper. 400 genes associated with that cancer promotion were turned off or down. Good or bad? Good. And 50 genes associated with cancer inhibition were turned on or up. So you don't need to wait until the day the doctor hands you down a cancer diagnosis to start making these changes. If you can start changing your lifestyle like this, those health genes will start to turn on and the disease genes will start to decrease or turn down. Now, you don't need, a residency on MRIs to figure out this one. You can see this cancer, the before and after, the same patient, one of the patients there from the study. On the left is the before, on the after is on the right. What's happening there? Cancer is shrinking. Why is that? The answer starts with an E. Anybody knows? Epigenetics, as the lifestyle keeps on changing and so forth, this has very positive effects in the prognosis of this patient. Now, this is not only about nutrition, it's also about sleep and other factors. Look at this interesting study. It was showing that if you sleep 6 hours or less for a week, you turn on 711 disease genes, including the genes of inflammation. Or this other one, how exercise turns on the health genes. Just 20 minutes of exercise turns on lots of positive health genes, and that benefit lasts for more than a day. 20 minutes, and you should be doing more than 20 minutes, But just 20 minutes has very positive effect. Look at this fascinating paper. Fathers that exercise, their children are smarter. Now you know why. The answer starts with an E. Why? Epigenetics, as you turn on those health genes, you inherit those health genes to your children. Disease never comes without a cause. The way is prepared, and disease invited. Why? By disregard of the laws of health. So I'm very happy that you're here this afternoon so you can learn about those laws of health and you don't violate them, rather help improve your health. Now, some people say, but doctor, this lifestyle is too difficult and so forth. Look at this interesting paper from the New England Journal of Medicine. This is a surgery they do a lot here in Mayo Clinic, not too far from here. So when somebody has a bunch of arteries of the heart that are clogged in, what they're going to do, they need to break the chest and expose the heart, and then they need to disconnect those arteries of the heart and plug them into a machine. And every time they do that, they create micro strokes. You cannot avoid those micro strokes. And then they're going to take their bisturi and they're going to cut down all the length of the leg, and then they're going to get one of those veins, and then they're going to take it and they're going to sew it on your heart, and that is what we call a bypass surgery. And then you put the whole thing together back there. So some people say, doctor, but a plant-based diet, that is too radical. What's more radical, the surgery I just described you or the plant-based diet? To put things in perspective, isn't it? What would you rather have? Even after that tremendously traumatic surgery, in this paper they were showing there about 40 to 50% of those surgeries, those new veins that they install in your heart, they start to clog them within a year or a year and a half. Imagine that. It is not worth it. It is not working. Rather, we need to start changing the way we live. Look at this one. This is Dr. Essen Still. I'm co-author with him in a book of nutrition called Rethink Food. And here he's documenting on the left side, you can see an artery of the heart that is nice and open and then suddenly becomes thin. And the reason why it becomes thin is because a big plaque of atherosclerosis is formed there. Now, same patient, only 32 months later, you see him on the right. What do you see? The artery, what happened? It opened up, started healing. Doctor, which pill he was taking? No pill. What he was doing intensive lifestyle changes. There's a paper there, quoting from the published paper. You can see there, after 32 months on a plant-based diet without cholesterol-lowering medication, showing profound improvement. So as you can see, we need to have control of our health. We learned today that those mice, as they start to change their lifestyle when the mother was pregnant, that effect was positive to the third and fourth generation. We also learn that as those rats are put in the wrong lifestyle, then we turn on the disease genes. We are also learning that a healthy lifestyle has an impact in more than 450 genes regarding the prostate cancer. And we also learned that 20 minutes of exercise has a tremendous effect on our health. So thank you very much for your attention, and I don't know how you want to proceed.
Yeah, I could just sit there and listen to that for hours. That was some good stuff. All right, I'll give like about 5 minutes for questions here. We'll get one or two questions. I see one in the front row here, Steve. There you go.
Is Rethink, what do you call it?
Rethink Food.
Is it out now?
Yeah, you can find it on Amazon. Just Google it there, Rethink Food, and you can order it there.
Okay, George.
You said that marijuana can change your DNA. How much marijuana would you have to take before that DNA would change?
That's a very good question. Just at the very beginning, what ended up happening as that THC and other of the active ingredients of marijuana are being introduced in the body, that's when the changing of the recipes start to happen, because you start stimulating certain things and you start shutting down some other ones. I was actually in Orlando recently, and I went to one of these factories where they are manufacturing even the oil and so forth. And this lady was explaining to me how even that oil, it needs to have that active ingredient. You know, she said, if it doesn't have it, it's no good. So watch out, because with the oil, your body will absorb that and it could have that potential benefit. Now, the good news is, as we stop using it, then, you know, the benefits start to come and so forth. No, so not unless you're taking it, you know, for a very specific, you know, medical condition and so forth. There's certain cases of epilepsy and so forth, you know, that you can only control with this. Many times there are other therapeutical options that we can potentially use so that we can avoid, those negative effects of the marijuana.
If they like take your DNA and then after you smoke marijuana, will your DNA actually change?
The DNA doesn't change, but you activate which of the recipes are being active. You came a little bit late, isn't it? You were not there from the very beginning. That's what we were explaining, that how there are switches in your DNA. So disease genes are activated, health genes are turned off. So that's the challenge. So the DNA doesn't literally change, but the activation of which genes are being going to be used more often, that's what starts to change.
Is there any way to change the DNA?
Good. Well, the DNA you cannot change unless you use some new technologies like CRISP and so forth, which are still quite experimental. But the DNA stays like that. But the recipes, which of the genes are activated, that's something that we can actually do. Again, we were talking about that at the very beginning of the lecture.
And you said that marijuana also affects the emotional part of your brain.
Big time.
How much marijuana would you have to smoke before you see an effect of that less of your emotional brain?
Yes.
Explain it very well.
Just one that starts to have very negative effects on your emotions. So yes, it's definitely not the best. I was trying to see if I have one here. Do I have it here? No, I don't have it here. But yeah, just one cigarette, that's enough to start messing around. It suppresses the function of your frontal lobe, and that's why the person starts acting the way they act. Even today, we're seeing a tremendous increase in the places where they legalize marijuana. We're seeing many accidents that happen under the people that are under the effects of the marijuana because it impairs your ability to make good decisions and so forth.
Okay, all right. You guys can talk, and so we need to take a break. George, we need to take a break. We need to get Dr. Dysinger up here as well. So we're running behind. We're already almost like 35 minutes behind. So if you could talk with Dr. Ramirez on the side, we'll get that going. So, all right, 2 or 3 minute break, and then we'll have Dr. Dysinger come with age and nutrition.
What about those people that
So-
need to be on marijuana
For what?
for medical reasons?
That's right. Yeah, that's what I was saying. If you need it for medical reason,